So, good afternoon, everybody. Hope I'm not waking you up. I had a nice lunch. We are today talking a little bit about the development we had with Kurier, our daily newspaper. Kurier actually was founded in the year 1945 by the US Army in Vienna and has become one of the largest daily newspapers in Austria. So we are quite old and we still are in some parts of our thinking and progressing our editorial work. Today we do not only consist of a daily newspaper, but we also do publish magazines. We have Freizeit magazine every Saturday. We have a magazine on career and on real estate, and we have special interest magazines which we publish irregularly. We have, meanwhile, 5 online portals which we publish daily, 24 hours, most of them. We recently bought into a TV station which we now renovate and will be relaunching it in January of next year. And we own 50% of one of the largest radio stations in Austria. So that's altogether the situation we are in today. And this was the situation we were when we came. I started exactly today, 3 years ago, with Kurier. And Adam, my CTO, came 6 months later. I was very happy to recruit him. He's the one below there looking up to me and being very much like I was astonished about the situation we had. We are among the largest online portals in Austria. We are ranked number 4 currently. We reach about 6.1 million unique clients, which is related to the use of mobile and desktop, approximately a third of the Austrian online community. We have roughly 50 million sessions or visits and above 35 million page impressions, not counting slideshows and videos. So this is real articles being shown to the visitor. We have 5 portals. They were all managed by 5 different systems, so we did not have one system for all the websites, but many systems for different parts of the website and for each website at minimum 1. We had 32 editors. We are now up to 50, focused on online only. We have another 120 editors who are partly working for online, who are the print editors. We are still separated, but at this very moment in the process of integrating the 2 editorial teams into one news team, which is very tricky. It's a conflict of generations, I may say, but probably you have this experience as well. We started with 2 developers. We are now 4, so that's a big gain. It's 100% more, though, but still a little number for what we do. We had 1 project manager, now we have 2, and we will recruit another one. And we publish currently between 190 to 230 stories a day. So this is our daily work, so to say, in our business. The situation we were in, we had a lot of challenges, like, proprietary code we didn't know. It was spaghetti code, it wasn't owned by us. We were highly dependent on third parties. We had extreme costs, a lot of undocumented features, I may say. There was a lot of sluggishness in there. We had crashes once a week at least. And that built up a lot of frustration among all the stakeholders in our house. Very easy to come to a wish list, and I don't want to bore you with any wish list because this is what we all actually want. We want a system which is easy to use, easy to develop with. We want it open source. It should be speedy, at low cost, with a high efficiency, lots of resources available, developers available, which can be engaged in projects. The maintainability must be easy. It should be very flexible. It should be competitive on the market with other systems, and it should have an ecosystem which we would like to be part of. So this was our wish list, and we also had a process in our house. So we created content and we had to optimize it, enhance it, publish it, learn from it, and earn money with it. So there are a lot of features within those 6 stations. We start with the editors. We have different kind of editors in our house. We have techies which have a very good knowledge of the internet and are able to program CSS and HTML. And we have editors who have difficulties in writing an article in Word. So what we did is we created 3 different user interfaces for our editors. So it starts with the audience developer who knows everything and may do everything. Then an advanced editor who is capable of creating complicated articles with a lot of features. And then we have a very simple user interface for the editor who just wants to write an article and maybe enter one picture in the article. We have external authors which are contributing to us, which we have to control and implement in our workflow. We have a lot of sponsored posts. We have roughly a fourth of our income today is out of content marketing corporations. This is something we have to integrate on our pages as well. And we have external sources for any content like AFP, Reuters, Austrian Press Agency, German Press Agency, you know them all. So what we do is we collect all the content in a repository, which is basically Elastic, and we have a semantic analysis running over it, and we automatically link similar articles together. The audience development is enhancing this content, looking for the keywords, SEO optimization, and so on. And then we are publishing it, and we're differentiating 2 ways of publishing our articles. One is the owned audience, which we have on our sites, so apps, websites, mobile pages, and then what we call shared audience. This is something we aggregate through partners like Microsoft, Apple News, Flipboard, and many others, which we currently feed with our stories. From this, we learn a lot. So we actually know who looks at which story, where and when and how long, and this gives us a lot of insights to optimize again the production of our content, and also gives us a lot of possibilities to earn from the content we are publishing. With regard to the development process, so this is mainly Adam and me, we were on the left-hand side, so we want to keep everything very, very simple. Yeah? This was actually our core goal, but we had to work on a daily basis with the editors who love to have a system which can do everything, even so they won't need 90% of it all of the time. Yeah? So this is kind of a conflict we were in within the development, and which made us decide just to continue and listen only with one ear to the editors, so that we are not stopped too much from the development process. Now I might kindly ask Adam to continue the technical part of the whole thing. I'll step back a little bit.
Good afternoon. So thank you, Martin, for the introduction. As you've seen in the previous slide, there is some form of process we had to re-implement. Obviously, this is not a greenfield project. So very soon there came the question how we should realize that. Obviously, writing everything from scratch is not an option nowadays. Like, I'm not the chosen one. There definitely are systems that are capable to fulfill those needs. And then another question that comes up quickly is, do we focus on open source, where we might have some costs like to adapt things, or do we try some proprietary out-of-the-box system? They promise a lot and they cost a lot. I think the problem with that mostly was that there is a huge gap. Actually, there are 2 gaps. On the one hand side, you have the product that you pay for a lot, which offers a lot of things that you will never need. And on the other side, there's still some missing parts that you have to re-add. And then comes the question about documentation, about ecosystem, about community, basically about what this is all about here. And there's the second big problem that we found out, identified with those legacy systems, sorry, not legacy obviously, but actually they are often legacy, that they dictate some form of process, right? But from our opinion, software systems should only embrace the company's way of thinking, not dictate it. So it was pretty clear shortly that we'll start with open source. Within that, obviously, there are also a lot of options. And actually, some 2 years ago, there was a Drupal camp in Vienna, where for the first time I've seen some, how I call, professionalism in the PHP world. Starting with Drupal 8, they put together a lot of actually already proven stuff, for which it is easy to find possibly developers, and you know, it's kind of a cool thing they set up with. And from there, actually we got to Thunder shortly after. And as you've heard today a couple of times already, this idea they have that we do not compete in technology, if at all, right? If at all, then we do it over content. But let's not reinvent the wheel over and over again. On the contrary, let's have this, what you call a Thunder coalition, where just basically have all the same problems, or at least similar problems. So let's get together as a group and find the best solution. The great thing about Thunder is that it does not dictate the solution, right? So it gives you best practices. It gives you a stable environment. So they say that this and this version of this and this module, you know, most people use it and it's cool, go ahead. So if you're a small company, you can just use it out of the box, basically. It's lovely, right? If you think you have to do it differently, you're free to. So I think that's a very nice trade-off here. So now that we've decided on the system, I mentioned earlier that obviously we have already a CMS working that we have to migrate. As that was really a legacy system, there was no structure. People didn't, editors wanted to insert YouTube, they just copied some iframe stuff, for example. Of course, given that nowadays we have mobile and desktop and all the others, it's a hell, right? It's really a mess. Luckily, Thunder already has this concept of paragraphs working, which I highly value, where you basically only store the serialized data. So all we need is to save the YouTube link. And then the presentation layer can decide if it's some native stuff, or if it's like small or wide, or possibly even not at all. Or maybe it's Google AMP, and then it works even differently. So that's a fantastic approach. And from that, we structured basically everything. I remember in the kickoff of the project, someone asked the question, it was an external person, what's the structure of your article? I said, well, I don't get the question, what do you mean? Like, yeah, how do you structure your data? We had the answer sometime soon, because we also decided to index stuff, and this is actually crucial, I think, once you have some volume, in order for editors to have this data in some very, to have a quick access to data, because given you have a couple of 100,000 of articles, millions of other assets, it's just not suitable, feasible anymore to do it through search manually. On the contrary, I think you have to save basically time for the editor, and if I remember correctly, we had the goal that we want to save 1 hour per day at least for each of the editors. It's time that is nowadays spent or actually wasted for smart people doing repetitive tasks, like going to some forms and enter some keywords and then waiting and clicking, and it's failing every time. So we inverted this whole approach. We said we index the data. Not only do we index it, we also do some form of enrichment. It's actually not only tagging, but for sake of simplicity, let's call it we tag automatically content. Why do we do this automatically? Because compared to now, where editors do have the possibility to do it manually, you have a lot of synonyms, a lot of duplicate stuff, that, and then you have a lot of not so valued tags compared to automation that takes care of this. And given the trend to AI, so I think it's a great approach. And from there, now that we already have content tagged, and we have a semantic value, and I think it's key to nowadays publishing, that you need some message, you need some semantics behind it. It's easy to map the current content that the editor works on to the already given store of data you have. So now when an editor writes about person A, or say Angela Merkel shakes some other person's hand, then the editor doesn't have to go to some backend and search for pictures for this and that. No, on the contrary, he just starts the title, A shakes B's hand, and within 300 milliseconds you have yesterday's picture where these two well, hopefully they show hands, right? And this is what we mean by just save time and let the people focus on the real work and get the distraction off of them. I think that's key for having a larger work base and having a productive environment. So this is what automate suggestions is. And obviously metadata for SEO and search engine and for the, not for the humans, but for the machines. And from there, we've taken it even one step further, where we have built a project that gathers all the data, but not only own, but possibly foreign data, metadata, social, and other stuff, and gives suggestions what to write about, possibly, what is hot, what is trending. So, but it's fully integrated in the CMS. So if I'm a sports guy, possibly I know what to write about, but if not, I can look up what's happening right now, like in the society world, in the sports world, in the news world. So this is, again, a huge time saver. So now that we have the article, we have it to bring it to the audience, obviously. And in the German-speaking world, or at least in Austria, we have the concept what we call channels. Luckily, Thunder also called it the same way. Actually, only at lunch break, someone asked me, how do you handle channels? Actually, no problem for us, because we always call it channels. And whereas usually never the explanation is because it was always like that. Actually, it was always like that, and for this one particular case, we stick with it. But we have in the daily news publisher world a bit a different approach, because the sites are much more fast-paced. I give a news page, the start page iterates within minutes whenever something new pops up. So we had kind of to decouple the layout from the content that is served within that layout. So whereas possibly many sites work simply with, placing blocks somewhere and telling which content goes there, this wouldn't be suitable, because again, the content changes much faster than the layout. And taken from there, it's not only manual selection, but actually most of it, and that's what's meant by trust your data, based on some KPIs, right? So think of most read, most valued, newest from within some section, and all this has to be taken into account. Another interesting thing is here, and that was a total break, obviously, from the legacy system, that we don't support really what you see is what you get. We do have drag and drop stuff, but besides that, per intention, we did not, because what you see is mostly not what you get. Because, editors or people altogether are working in front of their desktop machines, right, and think that they're to the site for this presentation. But as we all know, most of our audience does not do desktop solely anymore, at least, to say. And it would be quite hard to embrace this on the editors to take all this into account. So that's why we said, instead of giving a false sense of security, because on desktop it looks nice and the title is sufficiently long, we take it away. There is this wonderful module that also is part of Thunder now. It's called Responsive Preview. So at any given time, if someone's interested, there is a click, and how would this look on? And we actually start with some mobile devices. So the desktop, and obviously the audience development takes place in desktop sites, because it's just, people are usually working in front of there. But if you want a real preview, we kind of force you to do the mobile preview. If you really need, you can do a desktop, but hopefully no one will, or not solely. So that's why we also split the role between editors and audience developers. We talked about that. We still have the possibility to freely arrange stuff, okay? And maybe another, And as I mentioned here, that the content changes more often than the layout. So how to cope this? How not to, because obviously we have to display content, but we don't want to place content on the blocks. So this is how we solved it, basically, that the landing pages, or call it channel pages, obviously consist of blocks, as we've seen before, but they are not filled by content directly. They say this and that article, but we introduce something in between, what we called collections, which is basically usually some search query. As again, newest from sports, most read from this and that. And these search queries, obviously the query itself can be static. It can be heavily cached, just like the page itself. And then only the content with the query, the result changes once you start writing content. So this is very nicely decoupled. It's again the separation of concerns. There's the layout. There is even some form of semantic, because then you have a headline news, and then it's most read within news. But this not dictate which articles go there, because this changes very fast, again within minutes. So this decoupling of structure from presentation was key. Yeah, and then the third big point here is how to bring it live. So obviously, this is how many systems look like, especially in what we call enterprise world. But this is not my company. I don't want that. And possibly there are people that know exactly which cable goes where, but God behave it's Christmas, or he's sick, or just he doesn't give up, one day. So this is not how to run a company. Especially that, given that you have some volume, obviously you cannot put it all on your hardware. So the first thing we did, obviously, was heavily focus on caching. Not to bore you too much with technical details here. I mentioned already earlier that we have this write once and read often, so we save the redundant data in the index, and everything works from there. So the editor can work freely. And the crucial part here is that a higher load on the site should never affect your CMS. If it comes from one system, say often, then for whatever reasons, things happen, you have a high load, something goes wrong, some parameters wrong, and then the editors cannot keep up the work. So this is situations we had, and maybe you all had, I hope not. So that's why also we decouple this from each other. As you have several forms of presentation, from article to mobile to Google AMP to all the other stuff, there's another key concept I can highly recommend, which is called cache tags. So basically, every response we give has some tag on it, and then when I save the article or some whatever other content, I only have to tell the CDN to invalidate everything with that tag, whatever it is URL, because I will never know all my URLs. Scaling should not be related to traffic, we discussed that. Separate applications to scaling demands is exactly what I mentioned earlier, that obviously, as you see here, the number of articles we create on the left side is somewhat linear, right? But obviously the demand for caching is exponential. And on the lower right, you have a very interesting chart, which is showing that although the number of requests on the front end, which is the cache stuff, varies throughout the day, throughout the week, and has peaks, the load on the backend, or the number of requests to the backend, is somewhat stable, right? So even given you have elections or some Champions League game or whatever happens, this should never affect your backend. And the last thing is, from a developer's perspective, embrace tooling, embrace continuous integration, use testing, and also actually use platform as a service. There are several providers, from Acquia to Platform SH and what is their need, and that's for many reasons great. For once, I don't need DevOps. And when I have a new feature, then I only have to push the code to the repository, click some button, and within 5 minutes the URL will be terrible. It will be feature1.something. No one reads it, but it doesn't matter. I can send it to my boss, and I can show it to him and say, well, do you like the new font size? Or do you like the new feature? And people can try out, and it's isolated. And if it's cool, we can merge it. If no, we throw it away. Never be a way of throwing away stuff, especially in the development process here. Yeah, so to sum it up, this looks a little bit simpler than his, right? You have the Thunder Drupal in the backend. You have Elasticsearch for indexing, which I highly recommend. And then there's one API, and the CMS doesn't care who consumes it. Now it can be, actually, the top should be a mobile phone native app, and the left should be a mobile device. But, well, it doesn't care about the consumer, right? You have a structure, a clear, definite structure. You have a stable API, and whoever needs the data can get it and make it purple, make it white, make it whatever you want to, make it native. It's not the CMS's problem, actually. Another interesting concept is here that in order to have this highly static cache, we fully decoupled the community parts. So the login doesn't go through the CMS, right? This is also interesting in terms for next year's change of legislative. So the CMS or the editors, they don't even have access, they cannot have access to user data because it's not there. This is, and then we have, as we have several portals via single sign-on, obviously multiple portals served from the same, and it's so far working nicely, but there's obviously more to it.
Well, there's the earning of money, which is below of everything. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what technologies we use for earning money. We are obviously very much into the Google tech stack, even so we are publishers, and there are some arguments with Google about the legal issues, but nevertheless, DoubleClick for publishers, DoubleClick Bid Manager, which we both use, are probably the best systems on the market. We enhanced it with Improve, a header bidding system, not using the ad server, which is a little sluggish, but it helps us to gain some money. And for content marketing purposes, we also use Outbrain, which is the sole system we have integrated. We are also speculating with Legatus and Plister and Tabula, but at this very moment, Outbrain delivers probably the best ads and best results for us. On the analytics sides, we do use Google Analytics 360 suite, which helps us to get real-time data, and we have now an AI project running where we are focusing on using those aggregated data to personalize or individualize content for our visitors. And we will be going on live with this product by the mid of January. We also have a Ukrainian company, which we love very much, which is IO Analytics. They are from Kiev, which I may highly recommend this company. It's a very cool dashboard for editors just to find out how well their articles are performing. And we use Google Optimize for A/B testing and optimizing our pages. So just to give you a very brief overview on which technologies we are using here. A little bit of our schedule we had with the development of our Drupal CMS or Thunder CMS. We had a conceptual part which was from June to September of last year, where we made some key decisions, as Adam has layouted them. We started with the actual software development in late September of last year, and with February we pushed all our websites on more or less public betas. So we have Kurier AT and on beta.Kurier AT and beta.FutureZone AT, and we have launched now recently in October Motor AT, a small site. And we are in this very moment in a very agile process with the editors in optimizing the system towards all their needs, and we really do this some kind on working on a patient with a running heart and opened, and we're fiddling around in there, which is fun on one side. On the other side, you see immediately results, as Adam has laid out when we do developments, and which helps a lot in the understanding and finding solutions between the editors and the software development staff. In 2 weeks we will be launching FutureZone AT, which is our second largest portal, and in December Kurier AT, which are by far largest portal, and then there will be followed by a few other portals which we already have, Events AT and Film AT, and there will be some new portals coming out. And I was so much astonished when speaking to Adam and said, hey, I need a new portal, I have some editors and we want to fill it with this and that. How quick can you provide us with a new portal? And he said, well, you can have it tomorrow, and ask him around late afternoon of that day. So we are really very, very quick now in processing and establishing new platforms at our needs at any time we want, which is also very comfortable regarding the needs of our customers when they come to us and say, okay, can you do some pages for us? Can you do a portal for us? So those are services we do as a publisher already provide for our customers. What are the achievements thanks to Thunder, I have to say? Ease of use, open source, velocity in development, that's really cool. For me as a CEO, it was always very important to save money and to high efficiency. We have lowered our cost by 62%, which is immense, but as I've mentioned at the very beginning, we had very high external costs, which we cut in completely. We have a better maintainability, higher flexibility, we're more competitive, and we have with Thunder a very, very innovative ecosystem. Findings and conclusions, well, our key findings actually are we should coordinate much better with the Thunder roadmap. It happened once or twice in the last 12 months that we developed something which we then threw away because the Thunder team has developed it. We will include all the stakeholders at a very early stage in the future. And we have sworn not to rebuild anything but to innovate. That's actually our key issue. And as a conclusion, I may say that we are very happy with being part of the Thunder community. We love this, to contribute and also to profit from this way of professional publishing, and we would do it the same way, this is for sure. Well, thank you very much for your time, and if you have any more questions, we're very happy to answer any. Thank you.
Join the Thunder Coalition now. Spread the word, contribute, and benefit.